Hey everybody, welcome to this first Coast Caregiver Coffee. My name is Matt Estrad. I am a gerontologist in the greater New Orleans area, specifically in Covington. And I'll be meeting with you 4 times a month on Facebook Live, Mondays at 12 noon, to talk for about 10 minutes about basic caregiving suggestion tips. Many of these things I'm learning or have learned as a caregiver support group facilitator for Coast. So I do not work, I'm not an employee of Coast, but I've been working and partnering with Coast for 5 years. So since April of 2015, I have been a facilitator at the Covington and the Covington and the Slidell Senior Activity Centers, where every Tuesday I'm at one of those locations, and we meet as caregivers for an hour and a half, and we talk about we brainstorm tips. We talk about challenges. Sometimes we're venting, but all towards trying to figure things out and do the best that we can as caregivers. And the fellowship, I think, is one of the biggest benefits that people come away with, when they're attending the support groups. And it's not just, the support groups that I facilitate, but that are many in the area and around the country, of course. And while dementia and Alzheimer's are very common, very common, but they're more common as we get older. Not everybody that attends the group is caring for someone who has Alzheimer's or a different type of dementia. So many of the topics that I will cover on these Mondays will be related to Alzheimer's and dementia, but not exclusively. We still want to include other conditions. As we all age, our bodies are going to change. They're not going to work as they used to, so we'll talk about common strategies for some things. So in addition to some of the topics that I bring up on these caregiver coffees on Mondays, I look to you guys for questions, for topical ideas. At any point during the live event, you can add questions or comments in the live feed in the comment section, and it will pop up on my other screen over here, and I will do my best to get to those as you send me things. So please do that. And even if this is you're watching this in a recorded fashion, so if you didn't join us in the 12 o'clock hour, I encourage you to still leave comments and topics and questions, and I'll do my best to read and to answer those as well as I can. So I'm going to talk about Alzheimer's and dementia today. I'm going to talk about some of the caregiving tips that I have on a sheet that's called 9 Crucial Caregiving Tips. Now these tips, they do talk about dementia, but I think that they are not exclusive to dementia. If we are taking care of somebody, we're still gonna follow a lot of these tips. So just briefly, many people ask me what the difference is between dementia and Alzheimer's. And many people will say in a conversation, well, my loved one has dementia, but it's not turned into Alzheimer's yet. Or they might say the opposite. They might say my loved one has Alzheimer's, but it's not turned into dementia. So, and I never get into an argument or debate or anything like that directly to correct people, but I do sort of work into the conversation as I'll talk to you about the difference and the similarities. So think about dementia as a group of symptoms. Okay, it's like if someone says I have a cold, they might have a stuffy nose, watery eyes, they might be sneezing, coughing. So a cold kind of captures a lot of things, at least as we think about as non-medical people. Well, the same, it's very similar with dementia. So dementia is not a specific disease. It is more of a syndrome or a collective group of symptoms that are common, like happen together. So one of the most common things, and actually specifically for someone to have a diagnosis of dementia, there first has to be some kind of memory impairment. And typically this is short-term memory, where you can't remember how to do a task that used to be something very, very familiar to you, either something you did in your life or something you did in your occupation. Or you may not be able to remember what you just ate or that you just ate, or you can't remember that you may ask someone the same questions over and over again. and you may not realize that you're doing it, so you're relying on someone else to bring this to your attention. So that's the memory piece. Some of the other common symptoms, and this isn't going to happen to every single, let's say, this is not going to happen to every single person every single time, because we are all unique. So just like all other conditions affect us differently, it could be different situations. So we get the memory, and then we have sometimes someone does their judgment is impaired. Sometimes they're not able to do routine tasks like they used to, like balance a checkbook, pay their bills. Sometimes driving is something that can be affected. Let's see what else. Communication can be impacted, where you're not able to find the right words at the right time. Now, if you eventually think of it soon after, then it's probably nothing to be worried about. It might be something, it might be a reason to go get checked out, get some kind of cognitive test, but it's not something to really fret about if eventually you find your car keys after a little looking, or the words come to you. Some other symptoms are having inability, or having a problem with concentrating, such as on conversations, being able to follow conversations, especially if you're in a busy room and there are lots of other noises in it and you're having trouble focusing and following on the conversation, being able to respond. So those are your communication things. Sometimes people with a certain type of dementia will develop visual spatial issues, and this may mean that if you picture a checkerboard floors, like you're in a kitchen, it's got black and white squares. Well, someone who has dementia may feel like, or may think that those black squares are actually holes, so they're going to walk around them if they can. They may not want to cross a door threshold because it looks like a barrier to them. And many times it's these visual spatial issues that are the impediment for someone continuing to drive. There are other reasons why someone might stop driving with dementia, but the visual spatial, like stopping at the right place before you go into another vehicle, is an example. So there are many of these symptoms that overall we call dementia. Now, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Well, Alzheimer's is a specific cause of dementia. So, and we believe that between 60 and 80% of all of the dementias are caused by Alzheimer's disease, or Alzheimer's is a part of it, because you could have the other types of diseases that could cause a dementia. Remember, all these broad symptoms might be a vascular dementia, which is caused by vascular issues, as you might expect. Frontal temporal degeneration, or frontal temporal disease, is when the frontal lobe of the brain is impacted, and the brain cells are dying and they're breaking down, and that will cause certain types of behavior inhibitions. Let's see, other diseases are dementia with Lewy bodies, which is closely related to Parkinson's disease. So you might have some Parkinson's symptoms along with the memory impairments. And many of these things you really can't pinpoint until you go into a doctor's office, and you'll get what we call a probable diagnosis that we recognize by observing that there's some sort of dementia going on. And what they'll do is they'll take blood tests, they'll give you a cognitive test where they ask you to remember certain things, and they'll ask you to draw a clock. They'll test your recall and your reasoning, and do a number of tests that that there's not enough time to really go into all the different tests. But they'll come up with scores, and these will tell them things, like kind of give them pieces of the puzzle. They're doing the blood work and the imaging to see if, well, let me start with this. They're doing the imaging because they want to see what your brain looks like. Is it the normal size for someone your age? Has it shrunk, or has it gotten smaller or broken down in some way? They're looking at the blood test because they're trying to see basically if there are any kind of chemical deficiencies. Maybe it's a lack of certain vitamins that you're experiencing that may be causing this. They are looking to see. They're trying to eliminate all possibilities for the dementia, the memory impairment, and other types of behaviors and things that are going on before they say it's a dementia. So this is a disease where they rule out as much as they can before they come to a probable diagnosis of Alzheimer's, dementia with Lewy bodies, frontal temporal degeneration. So that's why it's important to go ahead and visit your physician when you or your loved one might be having some kind of memory issues. And I know it's scary to think about, that, well, what if they do find something? The only thing I can say is that with dementia, just like many diseases and conditions, you want to get to it as early as possible. Now, we can't halt the mechanisms and the biology of the different types of dementias. There are drugs that might be able to slow it down, but at this point right now, in June in 2020, there is no cure for it. But I still encourage people to get into the doctor's office as soon as possible to get at least get a baseline, so that later, in 6 months or a year, you can see, okay, what kind of changes have happened, and there may not be any. You want to get to the doctor so you can find all these things that it could not be, these things that you could rule out, which I mentioned the vitamins, I mentioned, I didn't mention this before, but lack of sleep, depression could sometimes mimic as dementia and cause confusion and memory impairment. So there's a whole number of things that you want to go to. You want to, and that's the reason why you want to go to your physician. Now, which doctor do you go to? Most people think, I say this, I think many people think, okay, it's the brain, so I need to go to a specialist, I need to go to a neurologist or neuropsychologist. And you can do that. My recommendation is to first go to your primary care physician. And there's a couple of reasons why I recommend that. One reason is that if you've been going to them for a while, they know you, they know your body, they know your medical record. All right, so that in itself can be helpful. They're familiar with your history. Another reason, even if you haven't been visiting with them for a while, it's a new doctor, is that you might get into your primary care physician or your PCP or your internist. These are all different synonyms. You might get to see them before you can get an appointment with their neurologist. Many times you can get the appointment, but it might be 2 to 3 months away, whereas for a primary care physician or even nurse practitioner, you might be able to get something a lot sooner. And then if the physician, the primary care physician, senses that there are any kind of challenges where they think that there should be more assessments done, then they'll give you the proper referral to the neurologist. Now, the primary care physician can also usually give you a brief cognitive exam or assessment that's going to give them some beginning pieces of the puzzle and let you know if they have any concerns where referral will be warranted. So I don't see any questions. I see a like, so that's great. So while we're live, I don't see any questions. But when we do go live, again, I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. But when we do go live, please know that you can write in questions. I would very much enjoy answering your questions live, because those are the things that are very pertinent and just not just the things that I plan out or that I want to talk about. The important thing is what you want to hear and what you want to learn about. So before I sign off, I do want to thank you for watching this, whether live or recorded, and I encourage you to leave comments, suggestions, feedbacks, and questions. You can also send me an email at matt@carepartnermentoring.com if you want to send any and all of those things. Also, if you have any questions about the Care Partner / Caregiver support group that we have on Tuesdays, which are still online, since as of right now the centers are not open yet, send me an email and I will answer your questions and let you know about those groups. Now, they are called caregiver support groups, but you don't specifically have to be a caregiver. You can be for someone. You can be in a family that is overall providing support for somebody, or has somebody who needs help. I mean, you might be intimidated about being a caregiver or being called a caregiver, but if you want to join and just kind of see what we're talking about as caregivers, we welcome you to do that, because families need to provide as much support as possible, and there are some people that are just, they're nervous, they're uncomfortable, and if we can help you feel more comfortable about stepping up to be a caregiver, I think that would be a huge win. So I thank you for joining us for this first Caregiver Coffee on June 8th, 2020. I hope that you'll be in touch, and I hope to see you next Monday. Thank you, and have a great day and week. Bye.